There we are, we're live.
Good.
Somebody's got to click over there, got it with the mouse. Okay.
All set?
Yep.
I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Dave Griffith. Here.
Becky
Rebecca.
Boynton. Rebecca. Present.
Yeah, Walter Gossett and Shannon Stone.
Fine.
Okay, meeting minutes. From 1/17/23. Move to approve. I'll have a chance to read them.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion. Meeting minutes from 3/6/23. Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor? It's a motion. New business, electrical land use ordinance language. Town council voted to remove electrical inspections and permitting at the town level. What's that all about?
All right, so essentially. Electrical permitting, historically, we hired an electrician and we gave him a hourly wage or permit fee basically, and that's how we did it. Since 2005, I believe, a couple of code enforcement officers ago and a couple of town managers ago, they said, hey, we're gonna put electrical permitting on the code enforcement officer to save us some money, right? So we get to keep all the fee. Well, the issue is, no code enforcement officer has been a licensed electrician since. Which if you don't have a license for electrical, you shouldn't be inspecting electrical. Basically, there's no code enforcement training for electrical at all. It's only for plumbing, building codes, ventilation, radon, stuff like that. So essentially, I went to the council and I said, hey, what do you think? Like, should we go back to hiring an electrician? Or do we just want to get rid of it? Which means, okay, does that mean electrical is not going to be inspected? No. Essentially what this does is most other towns our size does this. So Poland hires an electrician, but essentially, Oxford, Minot, Lisbon, other towns our size, all go towards the state, which means that at the end to get occupancy, you either provide me with a permit form from the state that says a state electrical inspector inspected it, or you have an electrician sign off on it. Okay, so if you don't have either one of those and you did it yourself, you're not getting certificate of occupancy. So essentially it's still protected, we're still being inspected. And it's how every single town our size does it.
So I'm assuming it's a master electrician that has to sign off.
Yes, yeah, an electrician that's licensed to do whatever it is you're doing, essentially. Commercial and multifamily has always been state level for us. I've only been doing 1 and 2 family. So that remains the same. So this 1 and 2 family now, you just either have to have someone sign off on it who's an electrician, licensed, or you have to, if you can't find one, the state provides one for you. So no matter what, you're still covered. So we figured that would be the best because we don't generate a lot from electrical permits in terms of revenue, and the amount we were getting versus the amount of time we were spending on it, we were definitely losing on that deal. And so basically the, council said, yeah, this is a good idea. Let's do this. And that was a couple of meetings. So now we have an ordinance though that says you need to get an electrical permit. So we basically just have to change that now to fall in compliance with what the council voted on. So that's why I presented the pages. So page 16, page 104, 105, all mention electrical permitting. And we can have more discussion around this if you'd like, but essentially it's just a motion to remove these sections of the land use ordinance.
The council already voted to remove it though?
Yeah, well, they voted to remove me as the electrical inspector.
Okay, so not modifying the ordinance.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
I was wondering
exactly.
if
They have
that's
not voted to
what-
modify the ordinance. There's no electrical inspector right now.
So where does that leave us now? If we approve this, of course, where does it leave us for 1 and 2 family?
Yeah, so
We'll
they,
do it then.
Essentially, they generate a permit from the state of Maine's website, which I point people to, and so then an electrician signs off on it. It can be any licensed electrician that's licensed to do what they are signing off
But they have
on.
to inspect it.
Yeah, they
That's
either
what
have
I
to
meant,
do it
yeah.
themselves and sign off on it, or they have to inspect it if the homeowner did it. But again,
Okay.
this is the protection because it falls under that person's license.
So it won't be permitted through us, but with, or it will.
It will not be permitted through us now. It's just gonna, there's a form the state provides called a 1360 form. And essentially what I'm gonna do as a part of the building permit is say, you need to provide me with a 1360 form at the end of this if you want occupancy.
Are we losing revenue? Could we still have it permitted through us, but still have it signed off by a master electrician?
I don't think so. I looked into this and it's not common. We're gonna lose about $2,000 a year in revenue. But again, the amount of time we're spending, I think we're saving about 4,000 or 5,000 in wages.
It used to be that you could wire your own home that you were building. Yeah, I assume you can still do that, but you'd have to have someone come in and inspect it.
So basically, instead of me, someone who's not a licensed electrician inspecting it, an actual electrician's gonna inspect it. So yes, you still can do it yourself. But you just have to have someone sign off on it.
And if you fill out the state form, the state, you can actually, when you're done, pay the state inspector to come in and
Yes.
inspect it, sign off.
If you can't find an electrician for yourself.
But for commercial, it's a state like inspector.
It's state already, yeah.
Okay.
So all commercial projects essentially are required for occupancy. The regional inspector signs off.
Good.
So that'll remain the same.
So do we need to do anything?
The only thing you gotta do is vote to change the land use ordinance. So if you look in your packet, you'll have 3 sheets of paper pertaining to this. So, page 16, section F. And then page 104 and 105, section H. Just gotta remove those so that our ordinances are no longer contradicting what our process is.
So I'll make a motion to remove section F on page 116 with reference to the electrical permit. And then also remove section H, which carries from 104 to 105 regarding electrical installations.
Second. All those in favor? Well,
Thank you.
so
I'll let you
5.2 is what we just did, right?
We just did 5.1.
That's 5.2 then.
Great, so I was waiting for you to, I didn't want to butt in. 5.2 citation language, so you have an email from town attorney. Essentially, I was reaching out because I was reading through a state statute about citations, that's also in your packet here. Let's see.
What is a citation?
Yeah, so essentially, if someone violates our land use ordinance, like,
Okay,
let's say they have a junkyard and they're not supposed to, or if they have a dwelling unit that has mold in it or something like that.
Good.
I send them a citation,
Good.
right, if they don't comply. So here's the state statute, it's in your packet. Essentially, it says that I can fine people between $100 and $2,500 for starting construction or undertaking a land use activity without a required permit. And then the minimum penalty for a specific violation is $100, maximum of $5,000. So right now, I essentially saw that and I said, well, the minimum is 100. Why does our citation schedule start at $50? Because our citation schedule, which I included in your packet, first notice, typically I send either a verbal warning or a letter. All right, typically I do verbal and then a letter saying, fix it by this date or I'm gonna send you a citation. And then I send them a citation. Number 1 is $50. And then I say, if you don't fix it within 2 weeks, I'm gonna send you another one. And then it's 100, then $200 for the third one. And then it goes to $100 a day. So it's kind of, just whacking them. And that's our current citation enforcement procedure. But the thing is, the minimum penalty is 100. So essentially I was reaching out to our attorney to say, hey, does this mean we have to change this to be a minimum of 100? She agrees with that. But then she brought us a completely different approach in her email. So there's multiple things the planning board can do here. But essentially, we could just as easy just change the 3 citation amounts. It's 50, 100, and 200 now, and then it goes to $100 a day. We need to change the $50 one to 100 at the minimum. But other ideas that she gave, is essentially the state statute gives me permission as code enforcement to issue citation. We don't need anything in our land use ordinance giving me permission, right? But because of our home rule, I have to follow this. Whatever's in the land use ordinance, that's what I follow. Her point is, if someone does something like really bad, right, just a really bad violation, I can only fine them $50.
Oh.
It's of her opinion that I should be able to just fine them 1,000 right out the gate.
But that's a state statute, but she says 50 is the max?
$100 is the minimum, and the max is 5,000.
But what did you just say about you're limited to 100?
So I'm limited to, in our ordinance here, citation system of code enforcement, let me find it here. It's on page 146. It says penalties for violations. It says first violation, $50, second violation, 100, yeah. Third violation, 200.
So she's saying that's out of step.
Yeah,
Where we
basically,
need to be.
yeah, the minimum's 100.
Okay.
The one question that I have, like, I think that's a great idea, but my only concern is there any kind of liability or risk to the town if you're dictating the amount without having some sort of precedent or like grid as far as what, dictates us assessing $100 versus a 500 and so on. I can see there, like, how can we ensure that, for the same situation, that they're both going to be assessed 100 and someone's not going to be assessed 100 versus 200. Because I
Yeah.
see that being a liability and a risk to the town.
Sure, and that's where I'm trying to stay neutral here, not advocate for either one, but the benefit of having this in the land use ordinance is it does give me parameters, and it puts me in a box so that I don't have as much leeway. I can tell someone how serious an offense is, so I can say, you either have 1 week or 1 month to fix this. I can even do 24 hours if it's something really bad. So that's the leeway I have now. But essentially, if you let it go, there is no leeway there. I just do what I see fit. So it's really, you want to let she even says here, it's a nuclear approach, but we can discuss other ways to approach it. And I'm open to that. I'm really just following your lead here. But, if you want to give me that leeway, you're welcome to. If you still want to keep some chains on it, we can, any middle ground that you can see that makes sense to you, we can still do. But it's just at the very minimum, we're at to change the minimum amount to 100.
What are typically the violations that we see most frequently? I'm assuming people picking up their yards is one of them, but like what else would we frequently see in which that violation?
Yeah, so violations I've issued for recently, I have something in my CEO updates, but yeah, a lot of junkyard stuff, unregistered vehicles, too many unregistered vehicles on a property. 9 North Main Street was a big topic here in town, and they accrued $4,600 in citations. So that was uninhabitable apartments. The mill had a $5,000 citation from a consent agreement with the council. And then other than that, illegal dwelling units is one I see a lot. So someone will just put in a dwelling unit without any permitting whatsoever. And then we find out about it later when they go to sell it, or like the one on Brown Road that came here a couple months ago, stuff like that. So for example, if I said, fix this, I'm going to fine you, I fine them 50. If they fix it within the 30-day time period, whatever time period I give them, their damage is $50. So one way I would, so for example, I had one situation with an illegal dwelling where they were claiming homestead exemption for like 5 years, and they weren't living there. So that cost us about $800 in revenue. So if I could only cite them $50, we're only getting 50 of that back, because the state doesn't completely reimburse us for the homestead. They only reimburse us mostly.
Do you actually have someone build a house without?
Not build a house, it's mostly adding units. And I'll give you another situation I might cite for soon is, let's say there's a contractor that keeps starting, well, they pull a permit, but then they do the work without calling for inspection, and it's covered up by the time they get there. Well, the remedy is tear it down, but what if it's concrete? you know? So then I can say, all right, well, next time you do this, it's gonna be a $500 citation. That seems more appropriate for that situation than 50, you know? But then I can't do a per day. Because, you know, it's not really a per day thing, it's more of a one-off situation. So
How
that,
much revenue did we get out of this?
so this is a high revenue year for citations, very high. We're about $9,800 in citations this fiscal year, which started July 1st.
9,800?
$9,800. It's normally 1,000. But between the mill giving us 5,000 and the apartment building giving us 4,600, I have a couple of various $50 citations out there. So it's really not that much more in addition. So I guess that's something to, I don't know if anyone has any initial thoughts on what they want to do with this.
I mean, I would agree that we at a minimum have to and increase that first violation citation.
Mhm.
Whether it's 100 to match like the state statute, or if we increase it, I don't know. I don't know that it makes sense for us to start calling out specific reasons for, you know, to issue certain
Yeah.
dollar amounts for certain citations, but.
You're agreeing with the lawyer on it.
I could see an argument both ways. I'll keep one on each side of the fence. I mean, part of me is like, yeah, good leeway, but I do like the guardrails. I do. It's fair and no one can say I'm being unfair.
Right?
Can we ask how frequent, like, so you issue a first violation, then a second and a third, what's the frequency in which you have to, like, it's not being addressed the first time around, and or say they cleaned it up, but then it goes back to the way it was,
Yeah,
what's the frequency that you see that?
I believe the citations restart every 6 or 9 months. So someone waited a year and started doing it again, they're back down to $50. So yeah, I mean, people with junkyards and unregistered vehicles are gonna probably do it again, and I'm gonna revisit it. So I guess that's one of the downfalls of the guardrails, but well, for most part, what I see is I get pretty good timelines. I have gone as little as a week before, but that was from mold. You know, that's a pretty serious issue. But most of the time I do 30 days.
I hate the word citation, but I understand that you can't get some people's attention.
Sure. Yeah. I try to give people really good timelines. Like I gave someone with their junkyard until August 31st to clean it up. With phases, like you have to have this part cleaned up by here and this part cleaned up by here, because it's a lot, but it's the most fair I could do. Most of them I give 30 days, but when it's too bad, you know, I'll give them more time.
If you raise the first violation to 100, then you should most likely do subsequent changes in the second and third too. What are you recommending for those changes?
Yeah, so maybe 100, 200, 300 would be appropriate.
For
Or
125,
125, some, I wouldn't want to be against that either. By the time you get to the third offense, you're gonna go to $100 a day anyways.
and the amount of time that you spent having to go and deal with that situation, right, that's
Sure.
costing you.
And certified mails. I do send certified mails. It's $8.10 a piece, and then drafting the letters. Yeah. I have to, by our ordinance, it's certified mail, which I get. But yeah, so it does cost time and money, but you know, it's ultimately a punitive item that's meant to get people to clean it up.
So I can make a comment?
Yes.
Come to the podium and, Dan.
Is that on?
Hey, you have to turn it on, click the button so it turns green. There we go.
Yes, my name is Domingo Irizarry. Been here 48 years. Okay, and when I bought the property on 18 High Street, I purchased it in the intent to redo it. I bought it as a two-family unit. Lo and behold, I mean, I used to come over here and tell Dana, okay, Dana, my apartment is a threat. But there was a set, was put on the list as an apartment owner. And they used to come down and, you know, ask me questions about the apartments and all that. And here I am now facing that the apartment was never set up as a two-family unit. It was set up as.
Does your comments address the citation that we're talking
Yes.
about, or is this something else?
Well, this is in regard to that. I want to amend it if I can.
LD 2000. 2023.
Yes. The reason why I'm saying this because I'm not seeing, I won't be able to see any of my returns. Whatsoever, because I gotta sell that's a single family home. Yeah, I bought it as a two family home. I have 4,600 feet of frontage in front of my house. I think I got more than sufficient, but no, I don't. Because according to the specifications, it's 30, what is it, 30? Well, it's 30,000 square feet for a two family unit?
It would be, yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I mean, who has here in Mechanic Falls, that kind of land? With a four family unit? I don't see any.
I think this is something for you to take up with Ryan
Yeah, so,
privately, and then bring it to us after Ryan has a chance to do.
We
it.
have,
yeah,
we have,
so so what they're saying is, right now, we're on the topic of citations.
right,
And we definitely want to hear your public comment. But yes, I did ask him to come here today because he has a situation that we're trying to deal with. And it has to do, something I offer to everyone is to come to a meeting and
Sure.
ask for the change. Sure.
But this is probably under 7.1.
We could do it in between 5.2 and 6.1 if you'd like.
Okay.
Let's
complete the citation issue.
Okay, we're gonna keep discussing, we're in the middle of a citation issue. So at the beginning of the meeting, we typically open up for public comment, but right now we're in the middle of a topic for the land use ordinance. So when we finish that, could we take this back up and we can explain a little bit more?
okay, sure,
Just give us like a couple more minutes.
okay, no problem.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
No problem.
So we want to change those then, your recommendation. And was
1, 2, and 5. Does anybody have any objections to that? And then would we still keep the $100 per day thereafter? I'm assuming yes.
I would prefer it because at that point, it's, yeah, I mean,
Can we increase it at that? Like, could we increase that $100 per day? Is that reasonable or is
that's
that?
gonna run out quick. I mean, a week is $500.
700, yeah.
Oh, so, yeah, all right, so,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah. It includes weekends, yeah.
not so fast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any concerns with the 1 through 5 suggestion?
Not here.
All right,
So, want to make that a motion?
yeah. I'll make a motion to change section 2.5 under penalty on page 146. First violation change to $100, second violation to 200, and then third violation to 500.
Okay, we need a second.
I'll second.
That's been seconded. All those in favor? It's a vote.
Great, thank you. Now we're in
Does that need
compliance.
to be approved by the town council?
It'll come to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that goes.
but
to
you
council.
guys have to do it first.
Junkyard language.
Under further consultation, with our attorney, they recommended not making that change that we want to make. So that's why we run it by legal, right? We don't want to do anything that we will regret later. They essentially said that it could be to our advantage point to keep it there. All right, so I'll leave it at that because legal counsel is not FOIA requestable.
Right. Well,
Right.
it's just taking out paper and ink. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but in this conversation, the attorney did bring up that our junkyard definition this is the last 2 pages of your packet. It essentially follows state statute, but in 2003, they repealed line D of the state statute. So we want to make sure our language is lined up with these plates. So they recommend that we repeal 0.4 of our junkyard definition to match with the state definition. Not that it has any legal implications, it's just something that we should do while we're at it.
We're just removing 4 under our junkyard definition.
Correct. And I show you the state statute on the next page
Yeah,
where
I saw
it
that.
shows it.
So do I have a motion to remove that?
So moved.
Any motion?
Move to remove the language. Where is it again?
Section 4 under junkyard.
I think I lost track of it here. I'm gonna take,
I'll make a motion.
yeah, thank you.
You're
I lost
welcome.
track of it here.
I make a motion to remove section 4 garbage dumps, waste dumps, and sanitary fields under junkyard in the ordinance on page 137, based out from state statute, which repealed that. I'll second that.
All those in favor? It's a vote. Now, would you like to? What's your issue now?
Great, so, and while you're coming up, I'll go ahead and just do some talking on how this came about.
Okay.
So the gentleman, as he mentioned earlier, on 18 High Street here in town, it's been on the market, trying to sell it, bought it almost 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, 20 years ago.
The thing is, someone along the lines adding the legal unit to this building. So essentially, we have an illegal second unit, and when he bought it, he thought it was a duplex, like he thought it was all legal, and I don't doubt that at all. But the thing is, now I know there's uninspected work in there, and our assessor classifies it as a single family. All of our files classify it as a single family. He doesn't have the land area to turn it into a duplex. So essentially, he's trying to sell it and can't sell it for what he wants to get for it. I gave him a letter and offered him the Board of Appeals, where he can appeal my decision, and he's more than welcome to go that way. Another way I suggested it was I just ran through our ordinances and I said, here's why you can't do this. Right? So you need this much road frontage, you need this much land area, and I walked him through it. And then I said, well, do you plan on living there? And he said, no. And I said, all right, so you can't permit an accessory dwelling unit. Well, then we talked about LD 2003, and I say it's still under debate. But another way to do this would be to ask the planning board to remove the owner occupancy requirement for an ADU. The other hand of that is, we're still not sure where LD 2003 is going. Because right now we have a July 1st deadline, and we have a lot of people trying very hard to either extend it to larger municipalities or to delay it by 2 years. So essentially, all the people who want to buy his property are investors who want to turn it into a duplex and use it as a two-family, and I can't permit it. So he's come here today to see if we could consider changing some of our ordinances to allow him to do that. Or if we want to keep them the way they are and see how LD 2003 shakes out, he might have to wait till July if it goes through July 1st, which is scheduled to as of today. And we'll have to make that change later. The thing is, on the other hand, if we make the change to remove, with LD 2003, we will have to remove the owner occupancy requirement for accessory dwelling units. Like I've already run it by legal, that's what we're going to have to do. So it's up to all of you, whether we wait until the day that this law actually passes, or if we just do it now and say we think this should be allowable in our community. It essentially opens up every parcel for a duplex, no matter what the land area is, which is the point of the law, right? That's why the state's making this law. I was going to give a CEO update, but I can kind of clue you into that. Essentially, there's two bills into play. One would limit LD 2003 to municipalities 10,000 or more, which is having a public hearing this month. The other one would delay LD 2003 by 2 years, but we're still going to run into this 2 years from now in that case. I don't know the legitimacy of either one of those bills. It seems like for the past year, people have been talking about these two counterpoints to LD 2003, and it's gone nowhere. There's been no changes. It's just gone right ahead of rulemaking. So all that to say, that's what he's here for, right? Did I summarize it pretty well?
You still got it. Good.
Awesome, great. So his next option, if we don't make a change for him to allow this to be a duplex, is to go to the Board of Appeals, which he probably will do if we don't make any sort of change, and there's no obligation to, right? But essentially, this is asking the question of, what about the owner occupancy requirement? In his situation, we have a real life situation here of, it's at the end of High Street on the left. Plenty of room for parking at the front. I've driven by it. He doesn't have the land area and he doesn't have the required road frontage. I think he has 105 feet of road frontage.
Right.
Even with our new changes, he would need 150 to do a duplex. So I know we made it more flexible, and that was a really good change. I'm really proud of what we did there. But for him, it's not quite enough, and I'll stop talking and just hear your thoughts about it.
Well, you always worry about precedent, don't you?
Yeah, I mean,
And I'm just saying, anything we do, somebody else can cite as a reason why they should do it too.
sure,
So, I mean. That has some weight. The fact that you've already approved it for one person, what if somebody else comes in with the same kind of a request? Does that handcuff you?
well, essentially, if we change the ordinance would be as it is.
Yeah,
I can't approve, it. I don't have the power to. The only people that have the power to approve this as of today would be the Board of Appeals. So the Board of Appeals sees cases like this, where someone comes in and says, hey, I want to be able to do this, and they have to prove like 4 areas, like one, they can't get a reasonable return on the property if they don't get this change, right? Or they don't get this variance essentially, which he has a good argument for.
right.
And 2, it wasn't caused by a previous or current owner, which again, we will see which way the board goes on that one. And there are 2 more criteria. Most of the time, it's a no. 90% of the time, Board of Appeals is a no. But with that said, I mean, if someone grants a variance, it's situation by situation. So someone else down the road that says, hey, I want to do that, they could also go to the Board of Appeals and say, you let him, but it doesn't change our ordinances.
Yeah,
It seems like changing to 100 feet of frontage for a duplex, it's getting to be a pretty small lot for a duplex.
Sure.
Not that I don't sympathize with you, I do, but
Okay, I got 4,600 square feet. In front of my house.
I mean, 4,600 square.
Yeah, what's it,
Do you remember how much square footage of land you have?
it's about a quarter acre. And the property sits dead smack in the middle. I mean, anybody could go drive by there and see it, it's a big giant lot in front.
So he has about, is that like 10 to 15,000 square feet? So
And
he-
you know, I always thought, when I purchased it, for me, it was a two-family unit, okay? We always had foster kids in our house. So I purchased it, and the intent to probably make it into a one-family house. I got sick. I got cancer, and now I got lymph nodes problems and all that other good stuff, so I backed off. I can't do it, I won't be able to repair it anymore, so we made the decision to sell the property. Now, I'm trying to sell the property to get at least my money back. On it, the money I spent. And I can't even do that because everybody's saying, no, we can't do it. Too expensive because the property is not considered a two-family house. I'm stuck in between the rock and the wall now. So I'm trying to get as much as I can back from my return.
Well, if he's been paying a tax bill for 20-some years, it says a single family home on it.
Yeah, correct. And that's one of the sort of caveats of this situation. This is a situation I
I
see.
mean,
sometimes.
I've been paying my tax bill and the sewer bill for the last 20-some years.
But did you notice on your tax bill that it says single family dwelling?
But I never said, I never seen that. Never seen that.
I'm sympathetic to what's happening to you, but I really think the appropriate way for you to go is through the appeals board. Not change it for the whole town.
I would agree with that too, only because of one of the things that Ryan said with regards to LD 2003 and that suggestion that, you know, that may only apply to communities 10,000 and over, like I would be very hesitant to make that change if we don't even know the direction in which that's going in.
Yeah, I think the changes we made are pretty major, and to
Mm.
make it even more seems really beyond what we ought to do.
Sure. Well, again, I always invite the public whenever I have a situation of anything where they can't do something with their land if they want to, I always invite them to come here, always. And he's actually the second one.
Can he get a waiver of any type, or
Board of Appeals is,
can give him a waiver?
they can give him a variance, yes. He has to prove, essentially, he has the burden of proof to prove the 4 criteria for the Board of Appeals. And then we have 3 people on our appeals board.
And that would affect just him, not the whole town.
Correct, yeah, it would just affect
Yeah.
him. It's for those one-off situations.
I think it's a better way to go. I really,
I mean,
I'm sympathetic to you.
again, like I said, anywhere time you walk, you got 4 or 5. You know, you got 4 or 5 apartments in one building. Yet there's no property. So where does that lead me into? It's like, what's going on? Why am I being told that I need 30,000 square feet?
Well, those are probably built before they were even zoning ordinance.
So I'm not crazy.
So in,
Long time ago.
yeah, April 3rd, 1995 is when Mechanic Falls first implemented ordinances. So
Right.
anything before that, it was pretty much the Wild West
Right.
in terms of.
I mean, the whole entire building is wired, electrically wired for 2 family units.
Yeah.
And if that comes to be, I gotta go back to 1 family. I gotta come up with the money to get that all fixed for 1 family unit.
Yeah,
So it's like,
and someone could buy it too and permit it as an accessory dwelling if they live there, right? If they choose to occupy it, and they could do
if
that.
they choose to occupy it.
Yeah,
right? What
that's
if,
the key.
what if they don't? And basically all of my buyers are being investors.
Yeah.
So, I'm basically stuck with this property. And my money,
You understand where we're coming from, though? We said go to the Board of Appeals, because then it would be just for you, not the whole town. And if we do something, it's gonna affect the whole town. We don't feel that we wanna do that for the whole town. But we're sympathetic to you and your situation, and that's why we're saying,
right,
go to the Board of Appeals, because they can do it just for you.
okay,
Thank you for coming, really.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate it too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, so you want to move on to 7-1?
Yeah.
All right. So my updates to all of you, I am chasing about 10 or so junkyards around town over the last 2 weeks. About 10 property owners have received a letter from me. There's a caveat in code enforcement. When you take the legal issues exam, it says you have to enforce equally. So instead of running myself thin, I waited until 9 North Main came to a conclusion, which essentially it is now. And I said, all right, now it's time before permitting season starts to start sending some letters. So I have started that process. So we will either see a very clean town or a lot of citation money by the end of the year. It's going to be one or the other.
About 10 of them?
Yeah, I've sent 10 letters and I'm hoping that all of them resolve it. We don't have to cite anyone. But I did start on one due to a citizen complaint. I respond to those when I can. And I figured because I responded to that one, I have to enforce equally. So I should probably start going after these other ones too. So some people you're only allowed 2 unregistered vehicles on your property. And so we gotta chase that.
Claim was on North Main Street.
The complaint was for Riverside Drive. There's quite a junkyard out there, and he's the one I gave a very long timeline to, because I understand that he can only move so fast, and there's snow on the ground now, so he has quite a while, because it's quite a bit of junk. There's one on North Main, there's one on Pigeon Hill, just north of the farm, it's quite a lot of junk. On Lewiston Street, coming into town from Auburn, there's one that has about 900 registered vehicles. There's 2 on South Main. And I think there's another one in there too, I'm forgetting, but quite a bit went out, so.
Jordan Road.
Yeah, that's one I'm working on, not a letter yet. That property is supposed to be up for auction. So because I knew it was going for auction, I thought, great, it's not my problem. It's gonna be the next person's problem, but they saved it. So now it's my problem again. So that one is basically right on the list. But I'm working with the property owner to try to get compliance. So we'll keep, I've already brought the DEP there to observe some stuff and we're working on it. So.
It's gonna take a lot of your time.
Yeah, it is. It's gonna take a lot of time and we're gonna be busy this year. Another one of my updates is that I'm getting a lot of inquiries of people building this year. I've had people come and get driveway permits. We should have about 5-6 homes being permitted over the next month as these road postings come up. So it's gonna be some activity there. Next month, we may have an auto lot coming here. I had to consult legal because it's going into place where an auto lot used to be. Car lot and a cannabis retail might be coming next month. For one of our current licensees to add a recreational store. So that, again, we're reviewing documents now. LD 2003, I kind of gave you the update a little bit earlier about that. I got another email chain this morning, actually, saying there's a public hearing. I think it's April 14th or 16th in Augusta. I think it's only in person. I had spoken at one, I think about a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago. That was on Zoom. And I stated our concerns over parking requirements with affordable housing, because that's the biggest one I heard from everyone here. It's the biggest one I had, and I said, hey, if you don't limit this to municipalities of 10,000 and over, could you at least take this and limit this to municipalities 10,000 and over, because it really burned us. So that was my message I kind of gave that day, speaking on my behalf as a code enforcement officer. Gen Code, so we hired someone to look over all our ordinances and essentially see if we're in, not necessarily compliance, but making sure all the statutes are up to date, make sure it's grammatically correct. They found a lot of statutes that were repealed like 20 years ago. So there was about 200 items between the charter and land use ordinance and other ordinances that they reviewed, and we have sent that all back to them. We've done a lot of back and forth. I was hoping we'd have it last month. We didn't, we don't have it this month, but I'm hoping again for next month. So I'll add it to the agenda if we do, but we have to vote through the land use ordinance changes if that does happen. That will also simplify everything for us, because every time we make a change, we just send an email to them and they'll upload it. And then they are the ones who are going to upload it online. So we don't have to touch this anymore. It's essentially a moving document. And as we make changes, we can reprint it for ourselves, but ultimately it's just going to be a live document that they look over, and they're going to keep track of statutes for us and everything else, so that we don't have to change junkyard language 20 years after the fact. We can just be right on top of it. In addition to that, I'm gonna have our attorney, once this LD 2003 shakes out, look over our ordinances for legal implications and other, just in general, just look it over and say, hey, how's it sound? And they might point out stuff to us that says, hey, this is really strange, or hey, you should reword this because this could be misconstrued, right? So that is gonna happen, but I'm waiting for LD 2003 to shake out because I don't want them to do it twice. All right, just once. With that said, I did get another member of the community asking me, and it kind of got me asking questions. So I know we made changes. I'm just letting you know what people are trying to do and what I've had to deny them for. Someone has a back lot in town, and they wanted to put an accessory dwelling unit in the basement, I think in the basement of their house. But our backlot ordinance says you're only allowed one single family dwelling, which means they can't do an accessory dwelling unit on their lot, even though they own or occupy. Something, I'm not sure if that was meant to be that way, if that was the intention of that rule, or if it's something where we say, hey, we missed that, right? But I just want to kind of bring it to everyone's attention here to think about between now and the next meeting. And just, you know, if that's something that you think people who have back lots, which are simply, they have long driveways and they have a, you know, couple acres, and it's each parcels will have one back lot if you have the land area. But it's essentially for people who have a lot of land, but not a lot of frontage. So we do have a couple of them in town. To me, it seemed a little bit different than what we've been approaching recently and how we've been looking at it. I don't know if LD 2003 will change that to where we have to allow them anyways, but I just wanted to bring it up because it was an interesting question.
No, I didn't pick up what the problem was.
So because it's a back lot, meaning it only has a 33 feet,
What frontage?
yeah, a right of way, and it's out in the woods or something, right? We say in our ordinance, in our backlot ordinance, you're only allowed one single family house.
And that was for safety issues.
Okay, and this lot is a couple of acres, you say?
Yeah, I think it's like 2 or 3 acres.
And, okay,
Yeah, so they just asked me if they can add an accessory dwelling. I almost said yes, but I looked at the backlot ordinance and I said, you know, I should study this, and because I looked at it before, and it says plain as day, only one single family dwelling on a backlot, nothing else. You can't do a multifamily, you can't do a business.
What's the safety issue?
Fire trucks being able to get down to it, and if they've only cleared, most times they don't want to spend the expense of clearing.
No,
And so in order to avoid, the other thing is that backlots are backlots for one house, not to become a addition to a subdivision.
okay.
and to Paula's point, we have had homes in this town burn flat because fire trucks couldn't get them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted
And
to
it
bring,
was the fire department that brought it, and that's why it was done.
But if it's in the same residence, ultimately this specific situation. It's not like it's an addition to, like, it's literally in the same building, right? And they're just looking to create like a separate living space
Yeah,
in their same house.
that's the way I understood their question, yes. Now,
Why is it an apartment?
that's a great question, and that's one of the biggest questions around LD 2003. Our ordinance differentiates it as it's essentially smaller than the primary residence on the property. That's how you can tell. But you have duplexes that have 1,000 square foot unit and a 600 square foot unit. Why is that a duplex and not an ADU? I would just say land use. You don't have enough road frontage, so it's an accessory dwelling unit, not a duplex.
And like Ryan said, under LD 2003, we may be forced to address that issue from another means. Instead of a 35-foot, we may have to require a 50 or 75-foot right of way in order to be able to accommodate the fire department and the rescue, in order to accommodate LD 2003 to allow these people to do their accessory dwelling units.
Yeah, but my comment on that is, I don't think we should do anything more.
Yeah.
2003 to 2003.
And this was sort of a separate issue type of thing. I'm not bringing this up because I think LD 2003 is going to change it. It's purely because the community member asked why. And I was like, well, that's how they made the ordinance, that's my answer. So I just wanted to bring that up. So I just have one more item for everyone. Let me see if I can get my head on straight here. So I came across an ordinance. I'm gonna pass this out. The reason I'm bringing this up is because, oh, there you go. You and I had a conversation about this one. So, this ordinance was made 2 years ago. And you essentially have someone come to me with the question of, I have a lot in the downtown business zone, there's a house and there's a garage. And I turn the garage into an apartment. But they don't occupy the property, so they can't do an accessory dwelling unit, right? But I looked at this ordinance here and I contacted our legal about it. And I said, hey, based on how I read this, I have to permit it. Because code enforcement officers cannot add to definitions. We can only look at how it's plainly written. I think there was a different intention behind this ordinance, and that's why I want to bring it to you. So in order to encourage a mix of uses, new infill developments in these zones, more than one principal use may be permitted on a lot within this land use district with the following minimum standards. So 1,000 square feet of commercial, 1,500 of residential. That's an ordinance. Nothing in this section. So you go down and it talks about existing lots under 10,000 square feet, and the planning board can modify dimensional requirements, right? But that's point B. So we go back to point A, and you just read point A. What does it tell you? Anyone in those zones that comes to me and has at least 2,000 square feet of land can get something permitted no matter what. Another principal use, as long as it's not a use that has to come before the planning board, right? So if it's another dwelling unit, it has to be permitted. So essentially the issues I see here are, what about road frontage? If they have 70 feet of road frontage, it says nothing about it has to be a conforming lot or non-conforming lot, right? Is the planning board required? Well, it doesn't say so. It says so in section B, but it doesn't in section 1. Is there a requirement for it to be mixed use, meaning commercial and residential, right? And well, it says mixed use in identified zones right there at the top, but nowhere in the ordinance does it say there has to be at least one commercial and one residential use, right? And then essentially I'm asking, what are the intentions with this? Should we rewrite it or leave it as is? I had a conversation with legal and they agreed with me that with my interpretation that I had to permit the second dwelling in the downtown business zone. But that isn't allowed use. When you look at duplex, it says yes, that means I permit it. But essentially I looked at this and I said, look, I got to bring this to the planning board because I'm not sure if this is what it was meant to be. So if anyone was there during that time, I'd love to hear maybe what the for purpose of this was, so we can either try to rewrite it with some legal help, or we can just leave it as is if that was the intention. But the intent right here, any lot whatsoever in all of those zones can have whatever I can permit out of my office. As long as they have 1,000 square feet for commercial use and 1,500 square feet for each residential use.
They were trying to encourage in those zones, the combination of somebody with a residence being able to have a commercial use in the same space.
So business.
Like Potterworks, yeah, yeah.
There's some stuff we can do with business occupation, home occupation with that, some, but the home occupation ordinance is very limited. I'm just throwing that out there as an addition.
Well, no, they were like, the Potterworks building was one of them that initially has come up numerous times and they've been
Yeah.
trying to do ordinances around it. At one point, they wanted to make that whole zone, that everything on the first floor had to be commercial. And then they could do anything with the second floor. Well, that didn't go over well with the business owners like Larry and Jay Bryant and people like that. So then this was the next attempt at trying to appease the council at that time to encourage, because their concern was and is that we are going to lose our downtown. Like Potterworks building, from having any commercial in it. Like there was a dentist next to Potterworks, which the dentist went away and it became a 4-bedroom or 4 apartment unit. Potterworks is now no longer commercial. It is now all residential because of this. So,
Anyways, I thought it was interesting. I had to interpret it how it's written. And again, I got legal help with that. And, you know, what do we want to do with this? I don't know if you're just taken back by it, or I can have the attorney prepare something. I can prepare something for the next meeting. I'm bringing this to you to say, hey, what are your ideas around this?
the way this is written, 22 could, to a degree, I think, be turned residential.
Yes, it could. Yeah.
Well, this was, it says March 1st, 2021,
Yeah, that
and that's
was
when
like-
they came up when Jay and others were concerned.
That was the third time that it came up.
Third
And that came up when Little Brick Pub
Oh,
and the lovely Crooked Hook.
oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
because they didn't want to lose the commercial aspect of those, the retail aspect of those first floors.
Okay.
So that was another stab at, or bite at the apple, trying to, and supposedly our prior attorney said, yes, this was good language, which obviously it wasn't.
And,
So the goal of this really was to say within one building, like we want to retain or keep, like, have a commercial as well as a residential, but that's it.
And well, this too, so we limit 4 dwelling units per building. So essentially, someone wanted to do a 4-unit apartment building, they only need 6,000 square feet of land, which there are some that have less than that or equal to that, like 9 North Main has 9 apartments and it's a really small lot, right? But I guess this right here is just allowing those really small lots to have more uses, and it kind of fits in those areas, right? But yeah, you're along the same lines there. It's just, again, how it's written now, this kind of makes it open season for a lot of people in these zones, which is, that's what it's meant to do. Great, let's keep doing it. But I just couldn't help but feel there's another
Yeah,
intention behind it.
And that was their intent. They were trying to preserve what was left of the commercial class retail of the business, like Potterworks building that had commercial on the first floor and residential above.
So we could set a standard for there has to be at least 1 commercial use. We can set a standard for there has to be at least 1 residential use. There's multiple standards you can set here. You could set a standard that limits it to different districts. you know, you can say it has to come before the planning board. Right, so then you'd have to look over all the plans before it's approved.
Paul, you're saying there, this was written to preserve what they had, not necessarily encourage anything more like it.
Well, at the minimum to preserve what is down or was downtown, and we've now lost the Pottle Works building because
Yeah.
it's now 4 apartments. And to encourage, but because of the way this is written, technically, based on if I understood what the town attorney is, the now town attorney is telling us, like 22 Pleasant Street, that could be turned into apartments. And we could lose yet another potential commercial spot
Okay.
to apartment dwelling.
What's 22 Pleasant,
That lovely building Albatross that we're trying to sell.
oh, you're talking about the medical.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. Okay,
so there are other ordinances, and I'd have to run it all by legal, that perhaps if there's an existing commercial use, you know, there has to be at least one commercial use from the date of this ordinance on out. So someone could turn that into a mixed-use building, right? There has to be a commercial use no matter what. It's another way to approach it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So like, how do you draft something to
But
make it?
Is it legal? I mean, I'll go to legal and say, hey, you know, here's a couple of ideas. We can spitball this over a couple of months. But essentially, you know, I just want something, give me a start here. You know, I'll go get what we need and I'll bring it back to you.
I think that'd be a good approach, because I think from my perspective and listening to some of the town council meetings and discussions we've had with them is they do believe that the planning board is anti-business. Specifically heard that comment before, anti-business. So, I mean, I think there is value add in these specific zones, right, that we continue to retain what we have at a minimum.
We're pretty pro business.
I thought too, but I,
Y'all were very pro business, but
Yeah.
maybe an entity or two on.
yeah, it's been brought up and it resonated with me very clearly.
Mhm.
So, but I think there is value for our town in general to make sure that we're retaining the commercial businesses that we have, in your opinion. Okay, Becky, Dave, I said themselves on that.
So, and then the other big concern that is floating around town for you guys to consider is, Walter and Steve have both sold out. Potentially, if they were to fail, if we don't have something to protect that up there, that could potentially all be turned into residential too.
now who was it you were talking about?
Who's Walter and Steve?
Hardware and grocery.
Okay,
Oh,
Future Foods.
Well,
The
the,
way this is currently written,
okay.
potentially, if they were to fail the new owners, that this could bring that problem.
New owners in both cases,
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and if I could just add one thing, I try to just present information, but I did notice that Pleasant Street Gateway was on here, but not Lewiston Street Gateway. And I'm just curious, again, I wasn't here when those two separate zones were made. Are they meant to be different? Are they meant to be the same? Do we want to include the other one or exclude the other one type of thing? Essentially asking, are these the areas that we've identified? We could also, if we really wanted to do something, we could say, hey, downtown business will be this flexible, but you know, in Pleasant Street Gateway, highway commercial, and Lewiston Street Gateway, you know, instead of 1,000 square feet per commercial, it's 5,000, right? If you really wanted to get into the weeds on this, we could do something like that. But essentially, this is applying the same parameters for all of those zones. And when I look at those zones, they look a little different to me. But we do have section B, which says you can modify dimensional requirements for the downtown business district only if the lot is under 10,000 square feet, which isn't a lot of them. So it's not a lot, but it's, you know, we have those downtown. So again, just want to throw that out there too, give you a process over a couple of months. But I can at least get some draft language and see, maybe I can even ask the attorney, what do you see? You know, what else can we do with this?
yeah, and try and preserve what we have for commercial.
Mhm.
you have enough to go someplace with it.
Yeah, I think I can at least bring you a couple different avenues based on consultation. So if we want, I'm gonna try to see if we can limit it to just be commercial, like once it has a commercial use in these zones. It must have a commercial use unless you get special exception from the planning board, right?
Well, and Ryan, I'll warn you up front, that was what it initially started out.
Yeah.
And it caused World War III.
Okay, so that's, maybe I missed something.
And that was who objected?
Like Jay Bryant, the Gary brothers, it was gonna affect some of their properties. I'm not sure where they were. They showed that we filled this room.
I will say, I did this month, permits. So the real estate office at One North Main, it's a 3-unit building, it has an office and 2 apartments. He essentially had a flood in the office and had to renovate it, but he said, well, I'm renovating it, I want to turn it into an apartment. Now, in our ordinances, it states, and I called Walter on this too, it states that I can remove, basically don't have to go to development review if the new use is equally or less intensive than the last use. And it was definitely less intensive, so it was permitted. Had they changed the number of units, like up to 4, or if they're at 2 and they were changing to 3, it would have went right here to planning board, because that's a change of use in that direction. But because they were changing to an apartment, there's no need for development review based on our ordinances. But essentially what I'm saying in that big long sentence is, instead of having a real estate office right there at the corner, we now have another apartment. So it's no longer commercial use.
Yeah, Pottle Works building is no longer
Yeah, I
commercial at all.
was just looking at that.
Yeah, so you have I think the Chinese restaurant's attached to that.
So-
You said the Chinese restaurant.
At this point, Pottle Works, the old dentist office, and Hook and Crook, which were all commercial businesses, are now all completely gone, and they're all apartments.
And that's all a direct result of this.
Various forms of it.
So the one I permitted off of it wasn't based off of this at all. It was, they could do that because there was no restriction.
Yeah.
On keeping commercial use. But that kind of caused an uproar. Something else I can do between now and the next planning board meeting is contact some people who have stake in this. And say, hey, here's the goal. How can we, from your perspective, how can we accomplish this?
And they would, and I know Mr. Bryant and Larry and those guys would be very, very open to that. Because that was their biggest gripe when they initially tried to do it, was nobody came to them. Council told planning board started to act on what they were informed that they needed to do by council. And nobody ever came and asked the business owners, how is this gonna affect you? Either positively or negatively.
I guess I would really like to hear from them. I'm a little troubled just making a bunch of rules here. And then
Oh, I agree. Yeah. This is definitely gonna be a couple month process for sure. I just wanted to get your sort of gut instinct on this to see, what do you want me to draft here?
I'm having a little trouble getting my arms around.
Sure. So I guess one thing, road frontage. So when you think about these zones and the purpose of this, do you think there should be a required road frontage? Like it should meet the minimum road frontage in that zone? Or
Even parking.
Didn't we just reduce road frontage though?
well, we did, what I'm saying, under this current ordinance, let's say someone in downtown business had 70 feet of road frontage. The current is 100, right? But I had to permit it because there's nothing that says that it has to be a conforming lot, that it has to have 100 feet of road frontage. It just says it has to have this much square footage, right? So even though it didn't, and again, if that's the purpose of this, then great, it accomplishes purpose. We have another unit going in. We'll move on. But again, we don't have to. We can just say, nope, it doesn't matter. It can have 10 feet of road frontage, right?
Road frontage would be really hard in that area.
Oh, I agree. So
That's one of the dilemmas that came up in regards to 22 Pleasant Street, was the first individuals who came to purchase it from us. Over the years, the planning board, in order to accommodate like Wilbur Pub, because they didn't have the land for the parking spots that they needed for the 80 people they could set, the planning board said, oh, well, you got the town parking lot. And we've done that with quite a few businesses in town without understanding or knowing that basically the outside parameter, all the parking on the outside from the, where Sheila's used to be, all the way around to where the car garage, the car washes, actually have easements on them. The town, in order to get those lots from the landowners that own them with the buildings in front of them, were guaranteed easements of parking for their individuals. So, it was a quite an eye-opening education, historical. So, I have to admit, I was very happy to a degree that the first deal fell through, because I was like shivering and trembling over the fact of how much road frontage or parking spots we were gonna potentially lose with that first deal.
So what I'm hearing is, let's not make a road frontage requirement if they're gonna permit under this rule. And I think that's reasonable. It's just, again, I wanted to ask. Planning board requirement. So do you think if someone's gonna use this ordinance to permit something, should they have to go to the planning board if it's not a conditional use permit, or should they always have to go to the planning board? Because it says in B, the planning board may modify the dimensional requirements of the lots under 10,000 square feet, right? But if it's over 10,000 square feet and it's in the downtown business, technically the one above this applies. Right? So that was kind of the situation I was in, where it was 10,017 square feet. And I had to permit it. But so I guess based on the way A reads, should that have to be a planning board item?
I personally don't like it when we have to make approvals on things.
Well,
That's just me, like,
I'll give you the situation. I just had a permit. Someone had a single family dwelling and a garage, and they turned the garage into an apartment. Do you want to see stuff like that?
Well, not if the ordinance is well written. I mean,
That's okay. That's a good answer.
yeah, it depends. We have to set ordinances that make it clear. Item by item.
No,
Well, this would just apply to these zones.
it only applies to them.
And I think it's appropriate they should come to the planning board, because there's a judgment that has to be made here on these four things. Would result in more advantageous siting of the building and enhanced parking, pedestrian service.
Well, and that's point B.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm only talking about point A. So if we just read point A.
Right.
So point B is only for downtown business under 10,000 square feet of space on that parcel. But when you look up at A, it's multiple zones, and I would interpret this as any of those zones that want to do anything more than one principal use. Now, if they said, I want to add a car lot, that's coming to you, because a car lot's a conditional use permit. All right, that's a planning board. I can't do that.
with this, you can't do it the way it's written right now. However, if we put that ownership on the code enforcement officer, can we do that? Like, so that it doesn't need to come to us? Like, why would we want that to come to us? Like, that's more question.
You're talking about like the other unit, like the second unit.
Yeah,
that's permitted.
yeah.
So, and again, that's,
Like, that's a lot of risk for us to take on, and quite honestly, like, to be fair, we could have one situation come up, right now, and then a year, 2 years down the road, we give a different answer because maybe we forgot or whatever. And then that person comes back and then it just becomes an uproar. I mean, that's probably, a long shot of a situation, but I just don't like it when we have to make decisions like that. That I feel like probably fall more on the
I can-
officer.
This is fresh to all of us right now.
Oh,
What is that about?
this is the rough draft of all rough drafts.
I would like to think that, I don't know if it's a work session, get the council involved, have a hearing or anything like that, that's down the road. But maybe at our next meeting, you could write up alternatives.
Sure.
Give us some points to go through, because I haven't grasped it entirely myself, like it was Walter. So if we have a session set aside in some format where, okay, here's the alternatives and here's the advantages and disadvantages. That
What
makes
is-
sense?
It does, but one of the things you guys need to decide is, do you want him to go in an avenue that will preserve the commercial resident or retail that is left? Or is it open game for going into apartment status?
I think we need to decide that
That's
once
what
he
I
gives
said.
us the options.
Yeah.
I don't want him to go into this thinking we have a point of view. I just want I'm glad you're bringing this up, Brian. It's a big deal. But I want us to have a thorough discussion based on his expertise.
Well, I think we want to try to preserve the commercial use.
I don't have a
You gotta
problem with
you gotta keep in mind, if it's a commercial use, it's gotta make money, and if the guy can't make money on it.
Yeah, he can't pay his bill.
Right.
Right.
And that's where I think it's great that these businesses have apartments in the second and third floor because they can pay the bills while running a business, right?
Yeah.
So something else I could do, I could write language for, all right, if you want this flexibility of 1,000 square feet per residential and 1,500 per commercial, it has to be mixed use, which I think might have been the purpose, right? Because
It was.
the paragraph says
Makes
mixed
sense.
usage and identified zones, but there's nothing that says that. It's only the title. So I think that could go a far way where it says, all right, well, if you want to do a bunch of residential, you have to meet the requirements. They're right here in the land use table.
The other thing.
But if
that
you want this
people were-
flexibility, that's mixed use.
The other thing that people were afraid of in that zone was, and Audrey, the attorney, is a perfect, her place is a perfect example. She started out as a residential. She has put on the first floor her legal business. The ordinance that they initially tried would have made it so that if that property got sold, it could never go back to residential. It would have to stay considered commercial and only be used for a commercial process. And the people in that area didn't want that. They wanted, if they wanted to have a home occupancy of bait and tackle shop, was actually the thing that was brought to us, a bait and tackle shop in the front part of their house. And 6 years later, they decided, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore, and they want to take their living room back, they'd be able to do that.
That seems appropriate to me.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
How do you write it? How do you write an ordinance that's
Well, in that situation, let's say you have a single family in one of these zones and you don't meet the dimensional requirements to add a bait and tackle shop, right? If we write this to say, all right, if you want this flexibility that you can now do this because we've altered the dimensional requirements for you, essentially you get that flexibility now because it's a commercial use. So that would mean though, if they want to take that commercial use away, they're just right back to a single family, right? So it's like it never happened because a single family would be permitted on that lot anyways. So I think the way we have it written now, yes, if we did write it in that, if you're gonna use it, like if it's, once it's a commercial use, you always have to have a commercial use on that property, you're tying people down.
Mhm.
So I could see why that would be harmful in some cases.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna definitely write language for, if you want to use this ordinance, it's a very flexible ordinance, then it has to be mixed use. Now, if you want to make apartments, you can do that as long as you meet the other requirements that are in other ordinances, right? But if you want this ultra flexibility here, you're gonna have to make it mixed.
Mhm.
And you can always convert back. It's just, I think that would be a fair, I'll give you some language, see if we like it. But ultimately, we gotta make it a little bit tighter and make sure that it can't be misconstrued. So, all right, I think I have what I need, and sorry if I drummed that out a little bit. I just wanted to really understand where all of you kind of stood at first look. And I'd love for more ideas to come next month, but I'll just plan on whenever we have another planning board meeting, which will probably be next month, based on the site plan reviews we have planned, that I'll bring some language, and we'll do the site plan reviews first, and then have this as another item later in the meeting. Fair enough?
Very well.
And that is the end of my CEO update.
Is there any way to accommodate their request to maybe get a hold of Jay Bryan and some of the land?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Down there and ask them to come and give some input.
Yeah, I can take their input, ask them to be here, any combination thereof, and see if we can come up with some other solutions for this because maybe it's something where we keep the second half of this just for downtown business and we create something else for the Pleasant Street Gateway, Highway Commercial, so on and so forth. Because we already have, the second half of this is just for downtown business. But it's lots under 10,000 square feet. So another thing we can do is just change that to any lot in downtown business.
Well, if we could get some of the language you're talking about,
Sure.
and then we have that, we digest it before we invite Jay or somebody else. I would like to have somebody we can talk to who's making money off his or her business and as an investment in downtown. It wouldn't call it a public hearing, I don't know, it's just somebody we can talk to besides ourselves.
Yeah.
And is there really a downside anyway? If we said, no, we're not gonna restrict it, or it always has to be commercial, is there a downside? No, it still gives us, more housing for people,
Yeah.
so.
But if the fear has been, in all the years that I've been here by prior council, is that if we lose our downtown businesses, that we'll lose our town. Because a town only survives if it has a downtown.
Can we also
I
get
agree,
somebody in?
otherwise it can become a bedroom community,
Yeah.
and I think you have to preserve rural town. Rural, small town, there's something that has an appeal there, and otherwise you're just a place where people live and don't shop.
So my question would be too, because if we make any modifications, it's gonna have to go to the town council anyway. Can we get any just feedback from them? Like in their next meeting, can we just have it brought up and just see what they say? Like maybe they have alternatives or ideas that we haven't thought of. Just to,
We can maybe add a joint workshop to the next meeting if you'd like to.
does it have to be a joint workshop? Can Paula present as a liaison, just to say this is something they were tossing around? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, either,
Yeah.
either one.
It's fine.
I
We can
think
see
that
that.
would be good, just, and then Paula could bring it back to us, so then we have some ideas,
Sure. Absolutely. So something else I just wanted to point out is, so when you go downtown and you go to, you have Pleasant Street right by the light, downtown business zoning. When you go to the next street over, Oak Street, mostly residential homes,
Mhm.
that's all downtown business zoning.
It is,
Yeah.
Oak Street?
Oak Street is.
I didn't
So
know
just
that.
keep that in mind as we're making these decisions, like that's also downtown business. So,
Yeah, Whitehall. Over where the funeral parlor is, where Charlie's flooring used to be,
Yep.
that's all considered downtown business.
yes,
And that's what caused the uprising, was because they were afraid that they were gonna lose their homes and be cloistered with commercial property taxes, because they had these small businesses in their residence.
Right.
basically.
all right. But I think I'm all good on that, unless there's any other items that we have to cover.
The June meeting, if we have one, I was wondering if we might be able to consider rescheduling that, because that's the evening for my daughter's chorus concert, so.
What date is that? It's the first Monday or Wednesday?
Maybe the Wednesday following the first Monday.
Okay.
Or I can just miss it, but
Yeah.
totally up to you guys, if they can, I can just miss them.
I'm in.
Yeah, so maybe in May, we can see what we have coming up. And then we can decide then, if I feel like we're gonna have something.
Okay.
We can create an alternate date for that month.
So our concert's on the 7th.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I'm just going off from memory. I would just remember it coming up and it falling on the same day as the board meeting, so.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?